All right, great. Thanks everybody for being here on potentially rainy or snowy Friday, depending on where you're calling us from. But today's session, well, quick introduction actually first for those of you who do not know me. My name is Cheryl Martinez. I am the STEM program manager with Growth Sector. Growth Sector is a national nonprofit. We are the backbone organization for the STEM Core program, which is a program obviously that you all participate on with on your campus. So whether your program is called STEM Core or OMG or Bridge to Engineering, you're still in the right place. All the same program under the STEM Core. So we're happy all of you are here. So before I introduce you to our presenter today, I am just going to give a kudos to all of you for being here for today's topic titled "You Landed an Interview, Now What? Tips for a Successful Internship Interview." So kudos to all of you for already being in the mindset of securing, applying, and thinking about interviewing for an internship. For those of you who are participating in our STEM Core internship process, several of you are in the process now where you might be being contacted by mentors to start interviewing. You likely have already or are in the process of going to be interviewing with our growth sector team. So these are all skills that are huge and important for you to be thinking about as you are moving into like this next phase in securing internships, research, and future employment. So like I said, this session is going to be recorded today. So I am going to turn things over to Myra Perez. And Myra, I'll let you introduce yourself to our group.
Yeah, good morning, everyone, or afternoon, or where you're at. My name is Maya Perez, and I'm a program coordinator for the Growth Sector STEM Core program. We may have met, I may have interviewed you, or you may have heard or seen some email communication from me, but I assist with all things student related with our program. And so I'm here to present to you this workshop that I think will be super helpful for you. Let me share my screen with you. Okay. Let's see here. Does everyone see screen well? Hopefully you see the screen. Yeah.
All good. Yep. Thanks, Myra.
Thanks. All right. Thanks, Becca. Awesome. Okay. So for today's workshop, just going really quickly over the agenda. Why even have today's workshop, steps on how to prepare for your interview, things to do for your post-interview, and then a chance for some Q&A. So why have this workshop? As you know, if I was the person who interviewed you or anyone from our team, you know that we do like to provide students with feedback on how their first round interview went. Because we want to make sure that as we are submitting your resumes and applications to the employers that we work with, we want to make sure that you are putting your best foot forward so you have the best chance possible. Because, you know, keeping in mind, there are many students who are applying for these internship opportunities. And so it's always good practice just to make sure to brush up on your interview skills. And again, just put your best foot forward. Apart from that, we have received employer feedback on what they're looking for, on things that they have noted in interviews with students. And so we definitely take this to heart and want to share it with you all. So again, you can better prepare. And also keeping in mind that this isn't just for, you know, your internship, but any interview opportunity, really. I have put these tips that I'm going to share with you into practice with all of my interviews that I have. And again, keeping in mind that interviewing is definitely something that is good to practice. So anytime you do get a chance, putting these to work, I think will definitely help strengthen these skills. So with that said, all right, there we go. Okay, so with interviewing, it's always important. Now, I know that for many of you, if you have completed your round one interview with us, then you may or may not know yet who we are submitting your application or resume to. But just know that we will be letting you know, hey, we have submitted your resume to XYZ employer. Once you get that information, I highly suggest that you make sure to do some research. Know who your audience is. Research the company that your resume was submitted to. Check out their website or their LinkedIn profile. You want to make sure you get an understanding of what this company is about. Look into its history, their mission and values, any sort of recent projects that they've worked on, because that I have experienced it myself, where I've gone to an interview and they've asked, like, why do you want to work with us, or what interested you about working with us? And so you want to make sure you don't look like a deer in headlights and I don't even know what you're about. So do your research and really find out interesting things, or it may not even it may be a question that arises through your research, right? Like, why the focus on this research topic area for this national lab, or why, or whatever it may be. But I think it just allows you to prepare best for when you're going to meet with the employer, to know who your audience is.
And Myra, one thing I was going to note for STEM core students specifically is you all have a very unique opportunity specifically for these STEM core internships, is that many of the potential employers that you will be interviewing with have come on these Friday calls to talk to you all, right? So they have already given you information about who they are, what their mission is, potential projects that you might be involved with. So when you do your first round interview with us at Growth Sector, it's super helpful if you say, like, hey, I was on the Kiewit call and I really like that they talked about like these two things, and this is why I'm interested in potentially interning there this summer. So a lot of the work is already done for you specifically for these STEM core internships. And just know, if you've missed one of those talks, they're all linked on our STEM core YouTube channel, which I'm going to put the link in the chat so you can go back and watch those talks.
Yes, great point. Thank you, Cheryl. Reviewing. Now, I always find it very helpful, and this may not always be available, so just keep that in mind. But if you do have opportunity to look at any sort of, whether it be the internship description, any job description, whatever it may be, go through that position description and check out zone in on what the key terms or experiences that they are looking for in a candidate. And then really kind of even, I like to hold my resume next to the description and see that, okay, what similarities do I have, or what do I have that they're looking for? So that way I make sure that in an interview, I have those in the back of my mind, or I have them kind of highlighted on my resume so I know to bring them up, because I know that if they're looking for this and I have it, like, I want to make sure that they know that. So, and again, this may not be the internship description may not be available for this opportunity, and that's okay. But what would I do? I would, go to Google, my best friend, and search, intern, engineering intern descriptions for, let's say, Lockheed Martin or whatever, right? So just look and see kind of what things that they're posting. Again, you might not be interning for that specific position, but look and see what they're looking for in general. Again, having those things in your mind, keywords to keep in your mind that you, again, skills that you may have or characteristics that you may have that you want to bring forth in your interview are super important. Another thing to review is your resume. I know that a lot of times we may stare at it while we're working on it and all that good stuff, but really still take the time to go over your resume and highlight any key skills, experience, or projects that you think are relevant to the company or the field that is related to the internship that you're applying for. I think this is super helpful, especially, so for example, when I go into an interview, I like to bring a copy of my resume and the resume that I have highlighted for myself. Why? You can get very nervous in an interview, right? And sometimes when the nerves hit us, we sometimes tend to go on tangents, or we just get a little flustered or caught up in our feelings, and it sometimes kind of can throw us off balance, right? for me, when I bring in a copy of my resume with the specific like highlights that I have or notes, it allows me to really zone in and focus. So when I'm talking, if I feel myself kind of like going off, I look at my resume and I say, okay, what did I highlight? What do I need to make sure to mention? What do I need to make sure to pinpoint? And again, it's just like a kind of a good reference point for you to have. So go over your resume, make notes, highlight. Don't go highlighter crazy, right? Because you don't want to mention every single thing on your resume, but just like the top key things to be able to bring up in your interview. And so with that, have at hand in your interview a copy of your resume for reference. In all of the interviews that I have had personally, again, it hasn't been for internships per se, but there's still interviews nonetheless. I've never had one employer tell me, sorry, you can't bring a copy in. Like, never has it happened to me. If that were to happen, okay, not a problem, leave it there, which is why it's good to review beforehand. But have it for you. Again, if they tell you you can't, then that's something else, but bring it with you either way. And then bring a pen and paper to take notes as needed. Sometimes you get additional information in those interviews and you're left without having anything to write with. So always kind of come prepared. And again, it also shows to the employers like your level of seriousness for the position. Don't miss an opportunity. So you want to make sure to prepare 3 to 5 questions to be able to ask in your interview. Especially when employers are saying, do you have any questions? And then there's that long silence and you're like, no, I think I'm okay. No, have questions ready. Again, it will allow you to find out maybe those burning questions that you had anyway, but maybe were a little too shy to ask. If you prepare for these questions beforehand, it also allows you to kind of think of things that may not come up when you have to think about it on the spot in the moment. So do some research. Again, Google's your best friend. Research potential interview questions specific to the position and to the industry. Another thing too to do is practice your answers to common interview questions. So a lot of times employers do always ask, tell me about yourself and why are you interested in this role or company? Or another question that I feel always hangs up students when I ask it is the strengths and weaknesses question. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And it really actually is kind of it does take some time to think about these things, right? Especially if you haven't really put much thought into it, then you're put on the spot and then you're nervous. So I personally would prepare for those 2 questions that I think are very commonly asked beforehand. So you can, boom, right away be able to come up with your answer. So some examples for potential interview questions that you can ask. And this actually, these are questions that I have noted that a lot of students have also asked in their round 1 interview with us. So make sure to take these on if you are selected for a round 2 interview. Can you elaborate on the day-to-day responsibilities that this job or this internship entails? Or what kind of projects would an intern like I be, placed on? What are the characteristics of someone who would succeed in this role? What does the career path for someone in this role look like? And what do you like best about working here? Again, being able to have some questions. Again, they may not be super hard questions for an employer and it's not meant to be, but again, being able to clarify things that you still have questions about, or also kind of hearing about them, right? People always like to, I find that most people always like to share their stories. So, finding out about why do you like working here? What is it about this company that has had you working here for 15 plus years? Those are all good things to ask. Now your dress. This is very important. I always tell students, when in doubt, err on the side of formal. You always want to make sure that you bring your A game to these interviews, because one thing that I like to tell students, because it has happened, is you never know what an internship can lead to. We have had students who have been offered positions after the fact. So you want to make sure that in any type of interview that you have, again, you put your best foot forward, you dress, nice. So some suggestions for men, if you wear a suit in a solid color, so kind of the classics, navy, black, or dark gray. long sleeve shirt with, that's white or color coordinated with a suit. You want to make sure to wear a tie and neat professional hairstyle. Again, we don't want to be looking like we rolled out of bed because sometimes what happens. But again, just making sure that you look as polished as possible. For women, again, I'm a big fan of blazers. I can't tell you how many blazers I have in my closet right now. So any sort of blazer like navy, black, dark gray, anything like that. Or if you want to be colorful too, that's okay too. But pick maybe a solid color. A suit skirt, or slacks, dress pants, coordinated blouse, solid colored dress, sweater. With jewelry, less is more. Again, you don't want to be too crazy with it. I found this quote that I thought did really well in explaining it. Channel your inner Meghan Markle for interviews and leave your Lady Gaga inspired outfits for the weekend. I personally am a person who loves patterns. I like bright colors. I like all sorts of different funky things, right? And so, but I know, because again, for many of these companies, you may not have had the opportunity to walk to or to explore their office in person yet. For many of you, I would say majority of you, the interviews are going to probably be via Zoom. So again, you won't have the opportunity to have walked onto these places yet. So it's kind of hard to tell what vibe or what type of dress they have on their day to day. So again, just to be on the safe side, I would suggest go formal. And then if you're selected for the internship, that's when you can also ask, like, hey, ask your supervisor, what's the type of dress that's required or allowed here. Again, it's just better to go prepared than go underdressed. Another thing.
Sorry, my one thing I was going to note too is that a lot of you might be interviewing with somebody from HR as well, as opposed to like your mentor or an actual engineer. And those dress codes can very much differ. Somebody from HR might be a little bit more professionally dressed and a little bit more relaxed if they're like your engineering mentor, right? So just being aware that you don't know who you're going to encounter until like you walk into that virtual room. So just err on the side of caution.
Exactly. And another thing to keep in mind too, if how you typically dress doesn't conform to the traditional gender norm, not a problem, right? Your interview attire shouldn't have to either. As well, right here, this is the key. As with gender specific attire, is to find clothing that's polished, professional, and a fit for the company you're interviewing with. Again, the whole point of this is just, best foot forward. You just want to look professional. It really, I think, does make an impact. And again, keep in mind that this is your first interaction with this employer, right? So as is said, with first impressions, like they really do make a lasting impression. And so you want to make sure that first view is like, hey, this is me. I'm professional. I'm ready to roll. So I want to share some examples of different types of dress with you, and I'll kind of explain the variety of them. For this is called smart casual. I personally would not use this for an interview, but it's a good example of maybe once you're hired on, or if even for the first day, right? Let's just say in the case that you ask the employer or your supervisor, hey, what is the dress code for you guys? And they don't get back to you and it's already your first day. I would default to maybe like a smart casual look. Again, or maybe even take it up a notch from this, but again, kind of just being a little more prepared than not. With smart casual for men, a neutral button down shirt, no jacket, again, because it's more casual. Casual leather or suede shoes are great. Neutral colored chinos, so those are the pants, are a perfect fit. While jeans look good, some companies do frown upon them. So again, you just better safe than sorry. Do not do jeans. For women, again, neutral colored pants, chinos, corduroys. Again, avoid those jeans. For the blouse, neutral blouse or top, mild patterns. With your heels, again, flats, or, if you want to do like casual, like kind of more professional work heels, those work as well. Here's another example of business casual. Again, with this one, you can include the the jacket or sport coat or a sweater. You don't necessarily need a tie for business casual. Open colored is fine. Neutral colors, again, you kind of want to think neutral colors until you, like I said, and get to the actual environment where you're going to be and you see what people are wearing, or ask your supervisor what the dress code is. It's always better to go just with neutral. For the women, again, tailored neutral colored blouse, blazer. Blazers, again, one of my favorite things because it really can dress things up. Tailored dress pants, and again, pumps or flats or heels. Now, this is business formal. This is personally what I would stick with for an interview. For the men, again, the suit with the tie, again, just looking polished, hair done, all that good stuff. Obviously, they're probably not going to be looking at your pants or your shoes, but we've seen, the horror stories over the past couple of years of doing Zoom and COVID, where you accidentally get up or the camera is pointed a certain way and they see, boxer shorts or whatever. So better maybe, err on the side of caution and just the full outfit. For women, again, traditional suit. You could do the suit pants or slacks. Again, just the classic colors, the heels, doing all that jazz. So hopefully those were helpful. And again, we'll make sure to post these. So if you do want to go over just kind of key things to look for also in your closet, that way you can keep it in mind, definitely check out our video. It'll be posted. And one thing to also keep in mind, be resourceful. You don't need to spend $1 million to look like $1 million. There are so many different avenues that you can use to be able to be ready for an interview. You can go to a thrift store. You can go to organizations such as like Dress for Success. You can even ask a friend, right? And a lot of times, again, if you just look in your closet and kind of see what you got going on, there is no reason to spend, too much money or get yourself into debt to do this, right? So definitely look for different resources that are available to you to be able to be prepared. Now, punctuality, this is definitely something that we have personally seen with students. I think many times what we've encountered is sometimes students think that this first round interview, it's, with STEM core, it's, no biggie. But honestly, we take it as a learning experience for you. We pay attention to the time that students log into the Zoom and they're in the waiting room. We have had several times where students show up late. Personally, I have a time where if a student doesn't show up by a certain amount of minutes, I cancel the meeting and it's done. If I was an employer, that'd be very bad, right? Again, this is with us, but still, I personally think students should still take it seriously because, again, it's a great practice run. But especially with employers, you do not want to end up showing up late. So if you have an online appointment, make sure that your technology is working ahead of time. It's funny too, because I'm able to see on my end when I may have just the other day, I received an email. Oh, this person logged into your Zoom meeting. I'm looking at the name of the student. I'm like, oh, the student doesn't have their appointment until Friday. But again, they were testing out the link and I was like, nice. That's what we like to see, making sure that things are in working order. Again, you don't want to wait until the last minute to log in and something happens or the link isn't working or whatever it may be. Try to work out those kinks beforehand. And then make sure to arrive early, whether it's online or in person, you want to make sure to arrive early. If it's online, jump in 5 minutes beforehand. Again, if you're having any internet problems, if you're having any issues with your computer lagging or whatever, being able to jump in beforehand will save you the stress of freaking out because something is not working. And then if you have an interview in person, I always say a golden rule, 15 minutes. You don't want to be too early and you don't want to be too close to the time. So 15 minutes is generally a good rule. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind, and actually I did catch myself saying a couple times, so I apologize. But you want to keep in mind to avoid the ums and uhs and buy yourself time by repeating the interviewer's questions back. So if an employer asks you, so, what are your greatest weaknesses or your greatest strengths? Um, uh, that's what you want to avoid, right? So instead of saying the uhs and ums, just even if you take like just a quick little moment, think about it. Or if you want to repeat, okay, what are my greatest weaknesses? I would say that my greatest weaknesses are XYZ. So again, that can buy you some time instead of having to use those lovely ums and uhs. Keep your answers concise and focused. Your time with each employer or each interviewer is limited. So please be mindful of rambling. I have a couple students, and it can be a bit, when you're in the actual interview, it can be flustering, right? It can cause you a bit of stress, but you want to make sure that you keep your answers concise and focused. Think about the question that they asked you. If you need to take just 1 second to really kind of, okay, what do I need to respond with? That's fine. But if you try to practice maybe common questions beforehand, I think it'll help ease you into answering. But again, you don't want to go off on tangents, because if you only have, for example, 20 minutes, you may not know how much time you have, but a lot of times employers do set a time limit on interviews. And so if each employer is giving each student 30 minutes, 30-minute slot, and you take 20 minutes to answer one question, they're not going to be able to ask you all these other questions, because they've already, what you've in essence wasted a lot of time in just one. So again, just making sure to keep yourself in check. And then respond truthfully to the questions asked. While it can seem tempting to embellish your skills and accomplishments, again, you want to make sure that you are honest. Keeping in mind that if you say, oh yeah, I'm an expert in like Word and Excel and all these other things, and they want to test you on it, there is that possibility. So make sure that whatever you speak upon, or if you do have skills, but you're more so on the beginning level, let them know. Because again, you don't want to place yourself into a situation where they test you and you're looking like a deer in headlights. So just being honest. And also keeping in mind that these employers know that you guys are all college students. They know that it may be your first year. And so they know that they're not working with, an engineer who's been in the field for 10 years. So don't be hard on yourself. Don't feel like, oh man, I don't have anything. Look at the skill sets that you wrote on your resume. And again, be confident to answer with those things in mind. Like, you know what you know, again, not embellishing, but give yourself some credit too. In regard, a couple of things to keep in mind. Be confident, which, the mind is a very powerful thing. And if you go into this super worried, I'm not good enough, like, why would they even want to hire me compared to other students, this and that, you're just going to self-sabotage, right? So before the interview, take a deep breath, exhale slowly, and just, encourage yourself. Give yourself some, self-motivation quotes. Have a quote in mind ready for that day. Again, they picked you for a reason, right? The fact that you were selected for an interview already means like, hey man, like they saw something in me that stood out to them. So kind of use that as a motivator too, right? They saw something in you that spoke to them. So just make sure to kind of self-encourage yourself. And also be genuine during your interview. Employers, I think, can definitely pick up when students are not being truthful. And so making sure that you're being honest can definitely help employers relate to you. And then showing positivity with a smile and upbeat body language can definitely help keep the interview light and constructive. This is actually something that specifically I remember from an employer who gave us feedback on student interviews that they conducted. One thing that they brought up was, hey, Myra, like this person didn't necessarily have the same skill set as the other person, but there was something about their excitement and their motivation, and you could just tell that they had a good vibe in essence to them. So keeping those things in mind, body language, your vibe, your attitude, those are all definitely brought into consideration when they're selecting someone. I was pretty shocked, not shocked, but it was very interesting to me to know that, especially even in an engineering internship opportunity, this company was more so paid more attention to the motivation and just the interest of the student than they did to the skills. So just something to keep in mind. Also keep negativity out. Don't bring any baggage into the interview room. What do I mean by that? Make sure you don't badmouth your former employer or any other companies you've been associated with, or complain about any personal circumstances. For an employer, I think that if a student comes in, or even just a general person who's applying for, any type of position, if you're coming in kind of bad mouthing your former employer and things for someone who is interviewing, that might kind of bring to them, well, does this mean that they're going to be talking bad about us in the future to other people? Like, I don't know. It just doesn't leave a good taste in someone's mouth. So just be wary of that. And again, be authentic and positive. Change a negative to a positive. If they ask you to talk about a challenging situation, which I know that's something that a lot of employers do ask, always make sure to include a mention of how you have helped to solve it and what you learned that made you a better employee. So just turn a negative into a positive. Again, especially if that question is asked.
Myra, I was gonna just add one thing that I know that we both see in interviews with students a lot is being negative towards yourself as well. So not bad talking an employer, but like just talking down on yourself. Like, oh, like I am interested in an internship, but I'm only a first year student. I don't have any experience. I haven't done that much, but like I'm a hard worker. Like, no, you have plenty of experience. So like, let's think about it a little bit. This is something that I see like Becca nodding to, that we're constantly coaching students on. A lot of you have participated in summer bridge programs. So I know for a fact the projects that you have done in those in your summer bridge program, and we designed those projects specifically for you to put on your STEM resume. The workshops that your support specialist is putting together, the classes that you're participating in your first year in the STEM core program, projects that you've done in intro to engineering, even if it wasn't a full semester long class, perhaps you participated in our Python programming academy over the winter break. These are all things, and maybe this is something that after you leave here today, you need to start accumulating, like, what are things that I have done that I can speak to, even if it's not a full like 3-unit class I've taken. What have I done and what can I do that I can draw on these experiences for when I'm asked? Because you're inevitably you're going to be asked, what skills do you have, right? So turning, again, a negative or a thought that you don't have as much experience to like, what have you done? Being in school is a vast experience that you need to be able to speak to, right? So start thinking about those experiences and how you can articulate that. Understanding as well that you're not speaking to Myra or to Cheryl who knows your curriculum. You're speaking to a potential engineer at Slack, for instance, and they don't know what courses you're taking right now. So like, you need to educate them on like what you're doing in those classes.
And thanks for bringing that up, Cheryl. I know that in the interviews that I've conducted with students, students who have answered in a specific way, I let them know, right? Like, especially if you've worked on class projects. Sometimes I get students who they'll tell me when I ask them the skills question, oh, well, I worked on a project for, a class, and we did something with this one program, and that's really all they stop at. And so please make sure, like, again, go over the things that you've done in class. If you need to even go over like the syllabus from your class because you don't quite necessarily remember the program or the name of the project or whatever, go through those things before your interview and just make sure you're able to speak to the different projects that you've done in class. If you find yourself in a situation where you're like, Myra, I haven't taken any, many engineering classes, or we didn't get to work on a project. And so the only work experience that I have is working at Target. That's okay too. Like, working at Target or a retail job or wherever, you develop a lot of skills too that are needed, right? So a lot of times I'll have students who are like, oh, well, I'm just a cashier. Oh, well, I just stock. Google, like I said, is your best friend. Google the job description for a cashier or a stalker at Target and see how they list the different things that you're doing there, right? See how they word it. It makes it sound so much better than just, oh, I stock shelves. Like, trust me, look at the job descriptions and see the type of skills that are required for those things, right? Customer service is a skill that not everyone has, let me tell you. Being able to, customer service can also speak to being able to work on a team, right? You're part of a team at your job. And so being able to work with others, or working on handling cash, or also customer service requires quick thinking and problem solving, right? Because customers come with complaints that you need to try to solve or whatever. So again, don't sell yourself short, like Cheryl said. There are so many skills that a lot of times we don't think about. So if you review the different like job descriptions, things that you've done in the past, your class syllabus, projects that you've worked on, just better prepare yourself so you can have an answer to these questions. So thank you for that. Okay, so after the interview, you definitely want to make sure that at the end, say you've asked your questions, everything's good to go. I would also ask your interviewer or hiring manager, whoever's interviewing you, what should you expect next? Make sure that's clear. If you need to do something on your end, or they have to do something on their end, ask them. They should be able to give you some follow-up stuff. And then also show gratitude. Remember to say thank you at the end of your interview for their time and opportunity. And honestly, to what I always find really nice, even when students do it for us too, I'm like, oh, that was so nice. But as an employer, again, it's an extra little show of an extra layer of gratitude. Sending an email. I put right there, sending a thank you letter, but I mean, X-nay on the letter. I would say do an email, send a thank you email after your interview, thanking them for the opportunity and the time that they gave you. Again, I feel it's like the cherry on top after something, and it really just shows like another level of professionalism, and more so in a student. So again, try to do these things after the interview. I think it'll leave you in a really good spot. Now, I have spoken a lot and I apologize about that. But I do want to open up time for Q&As. So let me see here. Oh, thank you. Let's see.
And you guys can put questions in the chat too,
Yeah,
if you don't want to unmute yourself.
exactly.
While we're
And
waiting for those to roll in, I was just going to note on your last point, Myra, about like after the interview. I don't know if we talked much about like follow-ups as well. So a question that you can always ask if your interviewer hasn't already given you next steps or timeline, that's a great question that you can ask. I know that we typically end our first round interviews just so you know like what the process or like timeline could potentially look like, but pay attention to like what the timeline is or the follow-up steps that they give you. If they say specifically, if you haven't heard anything in 4 weeks, please send me an email. That's something that you can do. But if they said to you, like, you need to contact HR, the process could take 6 weeks, then you need to be respectful of that as well, in terms of just being aware. There's a difference between thanking them for the interview versus like, hey, I just want to know what's happening. Hey, am I moving on? Like, just note that as well. You don't want to you don't want to be too aggressive with your follow-up either.
also great. Becca, you brought up something great as well that I completely forgot to include in here. If you're having your interview on Zoom, I've actually had this question asked by 2 students already, not here, but your Zoom background. If you are at home or wherever it may be, doing your Zoom, make sure that you're in a quiet place. I have interviewed several students where it looks like they were I don't know why they set up their interview time while they're maybe walking in between classes or they're outside taking their lunch. make sure that you set aside a room, a time, your environment where you can really give your full and complete attention, that there isn't outside noise. Again, you want to make sure you set up the environment to be ideal for this opportunity so you don't lose focus, the employer doesn't lose focus. So again, make sure you go, whether it be in your house or if you have to go, so even if you have to be on campus, but maybe if you even like set aside a room in the library or something, but try to find a quiet place where you can conduct your interview. And then two, in regards to Zoom background, if you're at home and you have to take the Zoom call in your room, right? And maybe your room is not the tidiest, not a problem, but again, maybe put a Zoom background, right? You can do, I've seen the blurred out background. I think I would probably lean more towards like a solid color, because even with the blurred background, you can still see the outline of things. And so if you have a heaping pile of clothes on your bed or whatever it may be, you can kind of still see that. And so I personally would go either prop myself up against like a plain wall or do a color background like this. Again, you don't need to do like the logos or your name or anything like that, but selecting like a solid color background, that's always a good way to go too. And then let me see. How can we respond to a question that we don't know the answer to? That's a good question. You can state right there, that was a great question that you asked. If it's regarding maybe a skill, or if it's regarding, how would I respond to this?
Yeah, so Mara, I was thinking the same thing. So I think if it's
Yeah.
like a technical question, so for
Yeah.
instance, like, tell me about a time that you have created or used like C++ in a project, and like you don't know the answer to it because you're not familiar with that program, you've never done it. It's always better to just tell them, like that's something that I've always wanted to work on. Unfortunately, I do not have the experience in that yet, but I would love to be able to gain it. Do you have any advice as to like what I could do? You know what I mean? Like taking it that way. I think it's always better to be honest about like not knowing the answer or not having the experience than trying to like talk your way through it, because it becomes very apparent that you do not know the answer, right? So instead of trying to talk in circles, just being straightforward, because then the interviewer is like, wow, that was like something that you can really value from somebody that you're interviewing. Like they took the chance and told me that they just didn't know. And that happens to all of us, because nobody, and your mentors will tell you all the time that they don't know everything either. And that's completely okay.
Exactly. Becca added here, great. You can respond with great question. I honestly don't know, but maybe you can tell me more about XYZ. A great way. And Cheryl just did the same thing where you say, I haven't had the chance to work on this, but then you also kind of flip it back to them, right? Uh, in here, can you tell me more about it? Or can you explain how, that's a skill or a program that how it would be used here, or whatever it may be. So again, just being honest. I don't know if I don't think I've shared here. I once had an interview where they were looking at my skill set and I put Excel on there. And at that time on my resume, I didn't put my level of comfort with Excel, right? And so I didn't put beginner, which I totally should have. And in that interview, they're like, oh, so how do you feel with Excel? I'm like, yeah, I feel comfortable. Like it's good. And so and it was actually, I think, the head of that department at that time. And she asked me, okay, so how do you add two columns? And did not look pretty for me because I do not know the answer, right? And so again, it's better to be honest upfront at the beginning and say, you know what, with Excel, I'm very much a beginner. I just know how to input things. But again, because I did not clarify that, it just did not look good for me. So obviously I did not get the job on that one. But again, lesson learned. Be completely transparent and honest. Again, you don't want to look like a deer in headlights, because if you are ever tested on those skills, again, you just want to make sure that you are honest. Any other questions? And again, you can feel free to unmute yourself or put the question in the chat. And I also do want to note that Cheryl put in the YouTube channel in the chat. So again, if you do want to look back at any of our videos with former employers, we'll make sure to put this video up as well. You can refer to that. It'll be there listed for you. But any other questions?
Another great opportunity for you all too is like in a lot of like our previous calls with employers, like they've given you like tidbits about like their career paths and projects that they're working on. So being able to like ask those questions during your interview, like, hey, I remember like Gladwell was last week, we spoke with Gladwell, and being able to say like, hey, like I remember you noted that you were working with these programs and this is something that I've looked into more. Like little things like that show that you are listening and that you are paying attention and that you can retain information, and you showed up on a Friday when you didn't have to like learn more, you know what I mean? So just taking back like all of these experiences you're accumulating and utilizing it to interact with potential employers and mentors is super key.
Exactly. Thank you for that, Cheryl.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think it's a Friday and everyone is possibly half asleep or they're very, very much prepared for their next interview. All right. But if you have no other questions.
Right. I would just plug to our students really quickly that if you haven't already submitted your internship application through the STEM Core program, the application is currently still open, and we will be keeping it open through until the end of March 31st, it will close. So if you haven't received the link from your support specialist, I would follow up with them just to make sure. If you have already interviewed, great job. Obviously some students will be moving on to second round interviews, but we'll be doing our best to connect as many students to opportunities as possible. I also encourage you all, like, yes, we do have great opportunities through the STEM Core program, but don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Like, you should be applying for other opportunities as well. So it's a great opportunity to connect with your support specialists, work with them to identify other opportunities. You're on campus where there's like a multitude of opportunities and information out there. So just keep applying, and in the best case scenario, you have multiple offers to choose from. But just keep putting yourself out there, I think, is the most important part.
Exactly.
All right. Well, happy Friday, everybody. Thanks again for being here. Again, we will send the recording out after today's session, and we will keep you posted for our next installment of our internship development series. So thanks for being here. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.